The African sun hung mercilessly in the azure sky, its rays beating down upon the vast savanna like the rhythm of an ancient drum. Heat waves danced across the golden grasslands, creating mirages that mocked the desperate and weary. In this timeless landscape where life and death walked hand in hand, a solitary figure moved with determined grace across the unforgiving terrain. Kesi had been walking for 3 hours now, her bare feet pressing into the sun-baked earth with each labored step. 9 months pregnant, her body carried the precious weight of new life as she navigated the treacherous path between scattered acacia trees and towering termite mounds. The fabric of her colorful wrapper clung to her skin, soaked with perspiration, while her breathing came in measured gasps. She had left her village of Mwanza at dawn, driven by an urgency that only a mother could understand. The contractions had begun the night before, gentle at first, like whispers of what was to come. But as the hours passed, they grew stronger, more insistent. The village's only midwife had fallen ill with fever, and the nearest medical clinic lay 15 kilometers away through the heart of the savannah. Her husband, Jabari, had wanted to accompany her, but their 3-year-old son had awakened with a high fever. The impossible choice every parent dreads had been thrust upon them: stay with their sick child or journey with his wife to deliver their second child safely. In the end, Kesi had kissed his worried brow and whispered, "The ancestors will guide me. Take care of our son." Now, as the sun climbed higher, painting the landscape in shades of gold and amber, Kesi felt the weight of her decision. Each step sent sharp pains through her lower back, and the contractions were coming more frequently. She paused beside a weathered baobab tree, its massive trunk offering a moment's respite from the blazing sun. Placing her hand on her swollen belly, she spoke softly in Swahili to the child within. "Mtoto wangu, we must be strong. Your grandfather's spirit watches over us, and your father's love carries us forward." The baby responded with a gentle kick, as if acknowledging her words. As she prepared to continue her journey, a movement in the tall grass caught her eye. For a moment, her heart stopped. In the distance, she could see the unmistakable tawny form of a lion moving through the vegetation. Her breath caught in her throat, but the great cat seemed unaware of her presence, disappearing into a grove of fever trees. Kesi knew the risks of traveling alone through lion country, but desperation had overridden caution. She adjusted her wrapper, took a deep breath, and continued walking. The village of Tembo, where the clinic was located, still lay many kilometers ahead. She had to keep moving. The morning air had been still when Kesi began her journey, but now the wind began to pick up, carrying with it the scent of distant rain. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon, promising relief from the heat but also the threat of flooding in the low-lying areas she would need to cross. As she walked, memories flooded her mind. She remembered her grandmother's stories of the old times, when the boundary between human and animal was less defined, when the spirits of the ancestors could speak through the creatures of the wild. Her grandmother had always insisted that animals possessed a wisdom that humans had forgotten, a connection to the rhythms of life that transcended understanding. Another contraction seized her, stronger than the others, forcing her to stop and lean against a termite mound. She closed her eyes, breathing deeply, waiting for the pain to pass. When she opened them again, she was no longer alone. 30 meters away, a magnificent lioness stood motionless in the grass. Her golden coat gleamed in the sunlight, and her amber eyes were fixed directly on Kesi. The great cat's posture was alert but not aggressive, her tail still, her ears forward. They regarded each other in silence, predator and prey locked in an ancient dance of mutual recognition. Kesi's heart hammered in her chest, but she forced herself to remain calm. She had heard that running from the lion was the worst thing one could do. Instead, she slowly lowered herself to a sitting position, making herself appear smaller and less threatening. The lioness tilted her head slightly, as if considering this strange human who showed no fear. To Kesi's amazement, the lioness took a step forward, then another. But instead of stalking, she moved with a curious grace, her powerful muscles rippling beneath her coat. When she was close enough that Kesi could see the ancient wisdom in her eyes, the lioness lay down, her massive paws stretched out before her. It was then that Kesi noticed the lioness's condition. Her belly was swollen with pregnancy, her teats heavy with milk. Here, in the heart of the savannah, two mothers-to-be had found each other. The lioness seemed to understand something that defied explanation, something that connected them beyond the boundaries of species. The wind grew stronger, bending the grass in rolling waves. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and the first drops of rain began to fall. The lioness rose to her feet and began walking, not away from Kesi, but parallel to her intended path. She paused, looking back with those penetrating amber eyes, as if waiting. Kesi struggled to her feet, another contraction building in her lower back. To her amazement, the lioness waited until she was upright before continuing. They moved together across the savanna, the great cat maintaining a respectful distance while somehow communicating that she was not alone. As the rain began to fall more steadily, transforming the dust into patches of mud, Kesi found herself following the lioness through terrain she had never seen before. The great cat seemed to know exactly where she was going, leading them around hidden gullies and away from areas that would become treacherous in the rain. The lioness would pause periodically, waiting for Kesi to catch up, her patience seemingly infinite. During these moments, Kesi marveled at the creature's beauty and power. Her coat was marked with the scars of countless hunts. Her muscles spoke of strength beyond human comprehension, yet there was something unmistakably maternal in her demeanor. As they crested a small hill, Kesi saw them. 3 more lionesses emerged from the grass, their forms moving like liquid gold through the landscape. Her breath caught in her throat, but the first lioness made a low, rumbling sound that seemed to communicate something to the others. They approached slowly, their movements deliberate and non-threatening. The largest of the new arrivals, clearly the matriarch of the group, had a graying muzzle that spoke of years of experience. Her eyes held a depth of wisdom that seemed almost human. She approached Kesi closely, sniffing the air around her swollen belly, and then did something that would remain etched in Kesi's memory forever. The great lioness gently touched her nose to Kesi's belly, as if greeting the unborn child. The baby responded with a strong kick, and the lioness pulled back, her eyes meeting Kesi's with an expression that seemed to say, "I understand." The rain was falling harder now, and the lionesses formed a loose circle around Kesi. But this was no trap. They were shielding her from the worst of the wind and rain, their powerful bodies creating a natural windbreak. The matriarch positioned herself directly in front of Kesi, facing the direction they needed to travel. As they began moving again, Kesi realized that the lionesses were not just accompanying her, they were actively guiding her. They knew the terrain better than any human ever could, leading her along paths that were firm underfoot and provided the best shelter from the storm. When she stumbled, exhausted and in pain, they waited patiently for her to recover her strength. The most remarkable thing was their silence. These apex predators, capable of bringing down prey many times their size, moved with ghost-like quiet through the grass. The only sounds were the whisper of wind through the vegetation and the soft patter of rain on the earth. As the afternoon wore on, the storm intensified. Lightning split the sky in brilliant forks, and thunder rolled across the plains like the voice of the gods. The lionesses moved closer together, their protective formation tightening around Kesi. She could feel their body heat, smell their wild scent, and sense their unwavering commitment to her safety. The contractions were coming more frequently now, each one bringing a fresh wave of pain that left her gasping. During one particularly intense contraction, she found herself on her hands and knees in the mud, unable to continue. The matriarch immediately moved to her side, lying down so that Kesi could lean against her warm, solid form. The sensation of resting against a wild lioness should have been terrifying, but instead, Kesi felt a profound sense of peace. The great cat's steady breathing and strong heartbeat provided a rhythm that seemed to ease her pain. The other lionesses formed a protective circle around them, their eyes scanning the horizon for any threats. As the contraction passed, Kesi looked into the matriarch's eyes and saw something that took her breath away. There was love there, the same fierce, protective love that she felt for her own children. In that moment, she understood that these magnificent creatures were not just helping her reach the village. They were honoring the sacred bond of motherhood that transcended all species. The storm began to ease as they resumed their journey, but the path ahead became more treacherous. They had to cross a seasonal river that was now swollen with rainwater. The lionesses moved to the water's edge, testing the current with their paws. The matriarch waded in first, her powerful body cutting through the rushing water with ease. What happened next would challenge everything Kesi thought she knew about the natural world. The lionesses positioned themselves in the water, creating a living chain across the treacherous stream. The matriarch waded back to shore and, with incredible gentleness, allowed Kesi to hold onto her mane as she guided her across the rushing water. The crossing was terrifying, the water cold and fierce, but the lionesses' strength and coordination never wavered. They moved as one, their powerful bodies fighting the current while ensuring Kesi's safety. When they reached the other side, she collapsed on the bank, overwhelmed by exhaustion and wonder. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple. Kesi knew that her baby was coming soon. The contractions were now so intense that she could barely walk between them. The lionesses seemed to sense this too, their movements becoming more urgent, their formation tighter. They had been traveling for most of the day, and Kesi's strength was nearly gone. Her feet were bleeding from the rough terrain, her body ached from the constant walking, and the pain in her lower back was becoming unbearable. Yet every time she thought she couldn't take another step, she would look into the eyes of her feline guardians and find the strength to continue. The matriarch suddenly stopped, her head raised, nostrils flaring as she scented the air. The other lionesses followed suit, their bodies tense with alertness. For a moment, Kesi feared they had detected danger. But then she saw what they had sensed. In the distance, smoke rose from cooking fires, and the sound of human voices carried on the evening breeze. The village of Tembo was less than a kilometer away. The lionesses had brought her almost to safety, but Kesi knew that the final stretch would be the most dangerous. If the villagers saw her approaching with the pride of lions, they might panic and do something that would endanger everyone. As if reading her thoughts, the matriarch approached and gently nuzzled Kesi's shoulder. The great cat's amber eyes seemed to convey a message of farewell and blessing. One by one, the other lionesses approached, each touching her briefly with their nose or paw, as if imparting some final protection. The matriarch led the pride to a nearby kopje, a rocky outcrop that overlooked the village. From there, they could watch over Kesi for the remainder of her journey while remaining hidden from human sight. As she began the final walk to the village, Kesi turned back once to see the lionesses silhouetted against the dying light, their forms majestic and eternal. The villagers of Tembo had heard the roars throughout the day, carried on the wind from the direction of the savanna. When they saw a lone pregnant woman approaching in the gathering dusk, they rushed to her aid. Kesi collapsed just outside the village, her body finally surrendering to the exhaustion and pain she had been fighting all day. The village's clinic was little more than a single room with basic supplies, but it was staffed by Mama Django, a skilled midwife who had delivered hundreds of babies over her long career. She took one look at Kesi's condition and immediately began preparations for the birth. "This baby wants to come tonight," Mama Django announced as she helped Kesi onto the narrow bed. "Tell me, child, how did you make it all this way in your condition?" As the contractions intensified, Kesi found herself telling the incredible story of her journey. She spoke of the lionesses who had found her, protected her, and guided her to safety. The villagers listened in amazement, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others nodding with the wisdom of those who had lived long enough to know that the world held mysteries beyond understanding. The birth was swift and powerful. As the sun disappeared completely behind the horizon, Kesi's daughter entered the world with a cry that seemed to echo across the savanna. The baby was perfect, healthy and strong, her eyes bright with the spark of life that had been protected throughout the incredible journey. As Mama Django cleaned and wrapped the newborn, a sound drifted through the night air that made everyone in the clinic fall silent. From the kopje overlooking the village came the deep, resonant roar of a lioness, not a hunting cry or a territorial challenge, but something that sounded almost like a song of celebration. The roar was answered by others, creating a chorus that filled the night with wild music. The villagers looked at each other in wonder, understanding that they were witnessing something beyond the ordinary. The lions were announcing the birth, welcoming the new life that they had helped to protect. 3 days later, Jabari arrived in Tembo with their son, Amari, who had recovered from his fever. The reunion was emotional, filled with tears of joy and relief. As Kesi told him the story of her journey, Jabari listened with growing amazement. He had lived in the savanna all his life, but he had never heard of lions behaving in such a way. "The ancestors guided them," whispered old Mazi Kondo, the village elder who had come to bless the newborn. "In the old times, before the world became divided, such things were not uncommon. The spirits of our grandmothers spoke through those lionesses, ensuring that mother and child would be safe. They named the baby Simba, meaning lion, in Swahili, in honor of the magnificent creatures who had made her birth possible." As the days passed, word of the incredible journey spread throughout the region. Some called it a miracle, others a fairy tale. But those who looked into Kesi's eyes when she told the story knew that every word was true. When the family was ready to return to Mwanza, they chose to take the same path that Kesi had traveled with the lionesses. The villagers had offered them a ride in their truck, but something called them to walk the sacred route once more. This time, they were not alone. Dozens of villagers accompanied them, wanting to see the place where the miracle had occurred. As they approached the kopje where the lionesses had kept their vigil, Kesi felt a familiar presence. The matriarch emerged from behind the rocks, her golden coat gleaming in the afternoon sun. She was not alone. Beside her walked two small cubs, their spots still visible on their tawny fur. The great lioness approached the group fearlessly, her amber eyes fixed on the baby in Kesi's arms. The villagers held their breath as the lioness came close enough to touch, her massive head lowering to gently sniff the newborn. Baby Simba reached out with a tiny hand, her fingers brushing against the lioness's whiskers. In that moment, a bond was forged that would last a lifetime. The lioness touched her nose to the baby's forehead, as if bestowing a blessing, then stepped back. She looked at Kesi one final time, and in her eyes was a message of protection and love that transcended words. Years passed, and the story of Kesi's journey became legend throughout the region. Simba grew into a strong, healthy child who seemed to possess an unusual connection to the natural world. Animals that would flee from other humans would approach her fearlessly, and she could predict changes in the weather with uncanny accuracy. The lions of the area were never again viewed with the same fear by the local people. Rangers reported that attacks on humans and livestock decreased dramatically, as if the great cats had developed a new understanding of their relationship with their human neighbors. The kopje where the lionesses had kept their vigil became a place of pilgrimage, where expectant mothers would come to pray for safe deliveries. Kesi often returned to the kopje with her daughter, teaching her about the magnificent creatures who had made her birth possible. During these visits, they would sometimes catch glimpses of the lionesses in the distance, the matriarch still proud and strong, her cubs now grown and starting families of their own. One evening, as they sat watching the sunset from the rocky outcrop, 4-year-old Simba asked her mother a question that would stay with Kesi forever. "Mama, why did the lions help us?" Kesi looked out over the vast savanna, where the grass moved like waves in the evening breeze, and felt the presence of all the ancestors who had walked this land before them. "Because, my daughter, love is the strongest force in the world. It doesn't matter if you walk on 2 legs or 4, if you have hands or paws, if you speak with words or roars. When life is about to enter the world, all of creation celebrates and protects it." As if in response to her words, a roar echoed across the plains, not fierce or threatening, but welcoming, like a grandmother's song. Simba smiled and waved toward the sound, and for a moment, Kesi could have sworn she saw the lioness wave back with a gentle swish of her tail. Today, Simba is a grown woman with children of her own, and she has become a conservationist working to protect the lions and other wildlife of the region. She tells her mother's story to visitors from around the world, reminding them that the bond between humans and animals is sacred and must be preserved. The descendants of the lionesses who helped Kesi still roam the savanna, and the local people speak of them with respect and gratitude. Rangers report that these particular lions seem to watch over travelers, and there have been numerous accounts of lost hikers being guided to safety by mysterious feline guardians. The kopje has been declared a protected site, and a small plaque tells the story of the miracle that occurred there. It reads, "In this place, the ancient bond between human and animal was renewed. Here, love conquered fear, and the circle of life revealed its deepest truth, that all mothers are sisters, all children are precious, and all life is sacred." As the sun sets each day over the African savanna, the roars of the lions still echo across the plains. But those who know the story listen with different ears, hearing in those ancient voices not just the call of the wild, but the eternal song of protection, love, and the unbreakable bond between all living things. The legend of Kesi and the guardian lions lives on, passed down through generations as a reminder that in a world that often seems divided, the forces of love and protection can unite us all. In the heart of the African savanna, where the circle of life continues its eternal dance, the spirits of the ancestors still watch over mothers and children, speaking sometimes through the wind, sometimes through the rain, and sometimes through the golden eyes of lions. Thank you for watching this video. I would be grateful for your like. Please do not forget to subscribe so as not to miss other interesting stories. See you soon.